der zentralen Position. Nur Schwarze hat er noch Vorsicht. Dann ist es vielleicht noch. Er ist im Strafraum. Und der Feld. Tor! Tor! Für die Frankfurter Eintracht. 5:1. Herrlich!
Hi and welcome to the German Fußball podcast. Week 11 concluded. Still Leverkusen on top. Kane scoring goals for fun. And we are going to make it a bit about Dortmund, a bit about Leverkusen and what follows. But first of all, welcome to the podcast and enlighten the audience what you've been up with this weekend.
I talked to my boss at Viaplay some weeks ago, and I said maybe I should have one weekend completely off.
Oh, wow.
Just to
radical.
Yeah, to go radical, and not least for your mom, radical for her to have me home for a weekend. But I stayed home. I did, because normally when I don't go to England, my boss will then tell me, can you sit in the studio maybe for one day? And as I love football, I love Viaplay, I've been there for many, many years, I always say yes. But it was good. So I went to Bærum, your former club, where you played from you were 12 to 18. They got relegated. I was standing with our mutual friend Stian in second half, and Strømmen scored, and they got down to level 4. I think the first time for 24 years. So that was a bit sad.
Yeah.
But I still, you know what it's like when you have weekends off. You watch every game. You're looking at the scores. Some relegation battles now in Norway. One of my former clubs, Hud, managed to get in a qualification position after a 0-0 in Ranheim. For those of you following Norwegian second league, none of you do. And but it was good to have a weekend off. And next week we are going to Scotland together, Markus. We're doing Norway, Scotland together. I look forward to have you as my personal assistant. So that's going to be a good weekend.
Oh, that sounds good. I'm glad you enjoyed the weekend. A little bonding time between you and mom as well. But also some good games. Obviously, Haaland scored again, and we had plenty in the Bundesliga to discuss. And since we always say, like we said before we go on live, we try and keep it around 30 minutes. So let's do so, and let's just go straight into it. But I think what we would want to do for this episode is really just analyze, I guess, the situation at Dortmund to begin with, I'd say. And with it being said, it's also important to note that you were on the Athletic podcast, which I would recommend, talking about Dortmund, and the discussion being mainly about, I guess, how should we define Dortmund? What should we expect from Dortmund, having been the challenger to Bayern for such a long time? And it was a pretty interesting discussions between you guys, in which on one hand, you have the challenger that never really reaches up to Bayern, epitomized by what happened last season when they butchered last game of the season. On the other, having earned the right to be the challenger, having actually earned the consistency through a focus on bringing in young players from abroad, especially, to compete. So there's those two kind of dynamics or dialectics, if you may. Now we go to this past weekend. They go to Stuttgart. Guardiola is back. Stuttgart lost their last 2 games. And quite frankly, that Dortmund in those first 45 minutes were overwhelmed, dominated by Stuttgart. And Stuttgart deservedly won. Guardiola with the winning penalty. And now, outside of Champions League qualification, now it's one of those in which, well, okay, Terzic is all right, but at least let us secure Champions League. It seems like, I'm coming to you at this point, but it seems like there's these shifting narratives. Oh, on one hand, they beat Newcastle twice, and it's great, and the way they played pragmatic. But now on this other hand, they're playing pragmatic, they're playing rather unsensationally, and that's the cause of concern. Where should we start? How do we make sense of this Dortmund team?
As I said in that podcast you were referring to, I said there is something wrong in the kingdom of Dortmund, because as you are saying, there are no great culture, and I feel like we talked about this for 10 years now, but it's still the same thing. What is interesting this season is 2 things that need to be a basic. First of all, as you were saying, they trashed by Bayern, but then they beat Newcastle. They were excellent at St. James's Park in the Champions League. And then back to Stuttgart game, in the first half, Stuttgart played them off the park. And then they had a counter-attack with Füllkrug made a good goal, 1-0 up. And after Stuttgart had missed a penalty. That was the second one they have missed without Guirassy in there. And then, very deservedly so, Stuttgart changed it and winning 2-1. What is the second part that is very interesting to note is that this time, Dortmund is dressed to win something. The reason I say that is that sometimes you have the feeling they have too many young talents. It's been a place where good turns into great. But if you have a look at the team now, the core is with Chan and Hummels and Royce. They've been a Füllkrug. It's not a young kid. They're taking on a team to win. So this is not that you can't hide behind to say, yeah, but this is there are too many young talents, too many players on the same kind of level, attitude-wise, talent-wise, and everything. It's a good balance in the team, you have to say, about Dortmund. There is something wrong now, and they are 10 points away from Leverkusen at the moment. I can do any bet. There is no chance that they will go past Leverkusen. There's no chance, because Alonso, if you see Alonso, and we'll talk more about Leverkusen later, 17 games overall, won 16. And the other one was draw against Bayern Munich, I guess, the 2-2. So Dortmund got to define. They have to define, as you are saying, define the targets for the season. Now, as you say now, we need to get top 4. I mean, the one who is kind of messing up that, the usual suspect is Stuttgart, who are in there. Sebastian Hoeneß is doing a fantastic job there, and they just have to make sure that Guirassy will be there. And Kobel was the best player of Dortmund, the goalkeeper. He had some great saves, especially in first half. So now it's a terrible situation for Dortmund to be in. And now going into the international break, when they're coming back, they have one home game against Gladbach. Then they're playing in Milano, and there is a lot of very hard game. And then they play in Leverkusen, I think, as well, if I'm not 100% wrong. And so it's a very, very tough time to be a Dortmund fan, because they are now, as I was also doing that podcast, they're just ahead of Eintracht Frankfurt.
They are indeed, and that's why it's funny, because football is, I mean, we have this short-term memory related to football, in the sense that we had last week, there was all the praise for this different Dortmund without any pronounced superstars, the more of emphasis on the collective, in which they were able to win against a growing club organization in Newcastle United, top of the Champions League group. But then we know it can shift again. They play Milan, they play PSG, and suddenly they're out of the Champions League. Who knows? It seems, particularly with Dortmund, we shift, and it's probably because we don't have any idea in terms of where we should place them. And then now there's but
sorry to interrupt you, but we have to place them at the top. I mean, they were just.
So you think that they should? But they should. Should they be? Should we expect them to be championship contenders every time? Should we expect them to make it to the last 16 quarterfinal in the Champions League? What should we expect based on recruitment, culture? You said, which is you're saying a bit poor, a bit disarray. Yeah,
but they should be best of the rest. They should be the main challenger. Now they are around Leipzig, a bit up, a bit down. Leipzig back now, beating Freiburg this weekend. Lost so many great players, Leipzig, and still managed to be up there. That is a great job of Marco Rose. I feel sorry for Terzic then again, because you see he doesn't know either. He made an interview with my colleague Archie at ESPN, and Archie wrote in a tweet, he said, when he calls me Archie at the beginning of the interview and Archie at the end of the interview, you know there is something wrong. Mm-hmm. And because he is desperate to find the solution as well. Now, where to put them? They were one bad game again away from winning the league last season. You should expect them to be the best of the rest. They're not. Leverkusen is the best of the rest now. They could end up winning this, Leverkusen, although we all think that Bayern will do at the end. But still, I have said all along, there is something wrong with the culture in Dortmund. There is something wrong with that lack of winning DNA. I haven't seen a winning DNA at that club since Klopp was there. Yes, they won some cups. They have. There is something about and I hate to repeat myself, but I did this quote that it was good that we left, that Bellingham was going, because he didn't embody, if that is a word for it, the Dortmund that we want to see. Yeah, so the Dortmund thing you want to see is that Dortmund losing games like in Stuttgart. If you have a look at the Bayern team, if you see how many difficult persons are in there, Neuer, difficult in terms of his 37, always want to win and he's back. Thomas Müller always want to win, desperate to win. He won everything, still want to be there. You have Kimmich, the same. Goretzka, the same. Leroy Sané, a sensible, emotional guy that's in there. Coman, the same. There's so many winners in that team. Even Gnabry, up and down, but they still managed to handle him. And I'm taking Kane without, because Kane is now Mother Teresa, Abraham Lincoln, Barack Obama, and everything in one, because he's just perfect in everything he do on and off the pitch. I'm just saying, Bayern managed to have so many players with an edge, but Dortmund they seem to be afraid of any player with an edge, because and that is on the management, that is on Watzke, that is on Sammer. That is on everybody. Sebastian Kehl, that's on Terzic, because that culture need to be built. Is it easy? Not at all. If it were easy, every club would have done it. But you end up having this same discussion like 100 times. What's wrong with Dortmund? So I that is as far as I can take it, Markus. So it's the same procedure as every season.
It is, but I want to bridge it into Leverkusen with Dortmund in mind. I guess, is it a further indictment of Dortmund's situation, a further criticism, or a further aspect in the criticism of Dortmund, the fact that Leverkusen have done so well, considering how they started the season last season? And we do remember Leverkusen were in disarray. Seoane got fired. They were close to bottom, if not bottom of the table. Then you have someone like Xabi Alonso come in. They secured top 6. They got Europa League semi-final. Now they matched the best ever start in Bundesliga history, matched with Bayern's Guardiola team in 2012, 2013, if I'm not mistaken. The fact that Leverkusen can turn it around, the Neverkusen, which we popularly say, that have had this culture of never kind of measuring up, they are now, 16 out of 17 games won, you said, perennial winners as far as we're concerned this season. The fact that they can turn around this season, surely Dortmund have to look themselves in the mirror and think, okay, how did they do that? Meanwhile, we've been kind of in this same state of almost for such a long time. If that adds another aspect to the criticism, I guess.
Yeah, but I think that you're right. I think that is the same also to do with the culture. Because not only Alonso is there, it's also Simon Rolfes, who is the head of sport there. And as you know, Markus, we talked football since you were born. And I always say, never think about consequences. Never think about consequences. That has been always my advice to you. That's always been my advice to anyone who is in a performance culture, because you have to do the right things. And if you see Leverkusen at the moment, they have another culture. They have Simon Rolfes. So they're struggling. They were struggling at the bottom a year ago. Okay, we need a coach. Then you start with the target. Which coach can fit into the way we're thinking? Okay, that is Alonso. Good. We save the place, as you were saying, ending up, was it 6th in the league? They're ending up doing well, getting into Europe. So still, Alonso and Simon Rolfes think then, what kind of players do we need to have in? The recruitment is brilliant when you get in a Grimaldo, again, a fantastic goal this season. Florian Wirtz was dancing around, gave it to Grimaldo, fantastic goal. They got him on a free, or players of the week, a week ago or something. So then you need, and we said this before, then you need a striker. Well, Boniface is in there. Patrick Schick, unfortunately, out with injury again now, but Boniface didn't score this weekend, but he was still so instrumental in the game. You get Hoffmann in from Gladbach, exactly the same type of player. Again, it's a consequence for the main target is to get that kind of player in. So, and then Leverkusen, have a look around in their midfield, and what have they lacked over the years? He's a leader in midfield. And it's not like then they say, yeah, he can do it. No, they just look, where is that defined leader? And that is your friend Xhaka. I mean, that is the former Arsenal player who is turned into a leader who I must say, if I think of the players, how they developed the last couple of 3 years, and we're not talking about a kid who goes from 18 to 21. This is a experienced player who is then turned into a leader on and off the pitch. That is impressive. That is impressive that what he has done to his career, taking charge of his own career, as there was some problem with that Teta. They took his captain thing away. And what he's doing at the moment now is brilliantly. And also the winning 4-0 now against Union Berlin. 2 corners, 2 center halves scored, great goals all over the pitch. So very impressive. And it's in contrary to Dortmund, but it's still about culture. It's still about culture. You can have a bad culture as well, and you can have a good culture.
Yeah, and I think to a greater or lesser extent that is instigated by individuals, because you will have then a Granit Xhaka who comes in as a player, as a leader in the traditional sense, right? The concept of what we define as a leader has changed, obviously, but you need that the same way Xhaka was there last season at Arsenal, and you had Martin Odegaard as captain, who were a nice kind of offset one another, in that sense. And I'll tell you a little quick anecdote about Granit Xhaka is that when I went there to film, and it's more so an example of his mindset to it, but I don't know if you remember, but a couple of seasons ago, Arsenal lost out on the Champions League spots towards the very end, lost to Newcastle, abysmal performance by Arsenal. He called them out. He called out the team after the game on Sky Sports, as you know, and got a bit of reactions. And Arteta went up to him and I said, I don't know how you will react if you don't play as much, because going into that following season, it seemed like he wasn't in the plans of Mikel Arteta. He takes 5 days off, holiday. He then proceeds to train. He drops 5% fat percentage. He comes back, a completely different man, way fitter, evolved in his role as a midfielder, and was one of Arsenal's standout performers. And now he goes into that following season. Go to your point that the evolution and development later on in your career, which is very impressive. We talk about development earlier in your career, but the later on and redefining yourself as that. And of course, without being too subjective, we would welcome a great challenger. And just to conclude with Leverkusen, matched the best ever Bundesliga start, 34 points, I believe. Let me just check the numbers. 31 points, 34 goals scored. And the Bayern, 2015, 2016, they had 31 points, 33 goals, 4 against, as opposed to Leverkusen, 10 against. It is rather extraordinary, and we do welcome it. At that point, Bayern were 5 points ahead of Dortmund. You guessed it. And now we have another challenger. That kind of, we've done Dortmund, we've done Leverkusen. I think we've run out of superlatives to talk about Harry Kane, but we can just mention it. 4-2 against Heidenheim, which I like. I've always thought Heidenheim would stay up because they've shown great character and quality throughout this season. But 4-2, Kane with another 2, and he has the best start of a striker ever, and beaten Lewandowski's, who had 16 in 11, as opposed to Kane's 17.
And the funny thing is, he got more goals now after 11 rounds that the guy who got the Torjägerkanone.
Yeah, Fulkrug and Nkunku had 16,
and Nkunku 16, yeah. And he is on a good run to get 41 goals, which Lewandowski beat Gerd Müller's legendary record. And now we got 17, and we haven't played 1/3 of the season. So he is on a plan to get 51 goals, and will he could get 50 goals. The most impressive thing was the first goal. If you saw it, he just got a ball and he just turned around, and fine enough that he turn around and score. But the way he did it was just unbelievable. The way he used his body to turn it around there. The thing is with Harry Kane is that if Harry Kane all his career has played for the top club, he would have scored double as much goal, because now we got people in and around him. But that is not to say that it's easier to score in Germany. It's just that he has better players in and around him. I mean, it's impressive. I mean, we talked a lot about the Erling Haaland last season, that his goal tally was unbelievable, and rightly so. After my opinion, should have had the Ballon d'Or. But if you see Harry Kane as well doing his goals for Tottenham, very impressive, nearly in the shadow of Erling, and then he goes abroad. And I will say that England got to be one of the favourites for the Euros. And now I've said it. And I know they don't have the world-class goalkeeper. I'm not sure if they have a world-class centre halves, except for John Stones, who can play everywhere. But Bayern, it was a perfect game for all of us that loves the soap opera in Germany, because they were 2-0 up, and then in 67, 2-1. Okay. and then Heidenheim took the ball out quickly because we wanted number 2, and Beste did it. It got a 2-2 back, and then, of course, Bayern turned it around. There was Guerrero, I think, that he had Choupo-Moting turnaround, good save, or okay save for the goalkeeper, volley from 16 meters, Guerrero, of course, and they're winning 4-2. But Bayern is like a bit vulnerable. That makes sense, but stats can be used to anything, Marcus. I think the best stat now in English football, of course, is that the last 5 games, the best team is Manchester United, which turn into any public opinions and discussions a bit funny. But Bayern is there 2 points after Leverkusen. They have to go to Leverkusen. I'm not sure if that helps anyway, but as long as we can keep going, the only thing that I feel, and we talked about a bit that in the last episode, I was so glad when we have 3 or 4 challenges, because then you're not so depending on the consistency of only one as we do now. But Leverkusen have shown this consistency, and I can see no reason why they shouldn't, because they are so brutal when they go forward, and they don't concede goals either, do they? So we'll see. But Bayern still, of course, I mean, that is a cliche, but it's still the favorite.
It was funny. I saw Heidenheim made a substitution as for these. Unless you're particularly interested, you will know. But his name is Adrian Beck. And I saw him being subbed on at Allianz Arena, and then I said, "Can you imagine? I went to play reserve games with him in Scotland, in corners of Scotland you've never been." And I remember him. He was on loan from Union Saint-Gilles. And he was there. I think his loan got cut short, but it's just an example of how football is funny in that way. Sometimes it's about the environment, it's about timing. And him and I, when we were both out of the team at Hamilton, we were going to reserve games. And I said, "Look at you now." So I thought, all right, good for you, and good inspiration, valuable reference for anyone who says or thinks they can't make it.
Dreams come true. To quote the legendary Whitney Houston in one moment in time, she is singing, "Your dreams are just one heartbeat away," and that is football. That is football for you. You see, you need that run. And as a goal getter, I know all about that, because you need that feeling to get that first goal. Imagine now Højlund at Manchester United. You see his runs brilliantly. He has done it in the Champions League, but he hasn't done it in the Premier League so far. And there is so many small things that decide all these kind of things for you as a football player, and I think that story just shows you there is always a chance, and there is always a chance that you can, again, don't think of the consequences, work hard, and think that the coincidences can. And I remember back in the days when you called me up and say, "I'm not playing tomorrow, there's depressing, I'm not playing the starting 11," and we tried to be as sensible we could when we talked about it. And what happened in the evening or something, and a player got ill or something, and you were in the team again, just shows you how sport are like. And again, I think that the main thing in this episode has been, don't think of the consequences, just work very, very hard. And Heidenheim, I'm with you, Marcus. I think Heidenheim could be there. We don't have to make a big mess out of Union Berlin, because we have talked about that. 1-1 in Napoli. By the way, I saw the Napoli coach, was it Garcia, was fired after that game. Going back in the league, and they got 6 points now in 11 games. I think that Union Berlin could go down because they're not prepared for or they were prepared for that battle when they were coming up, but now they are in the Champions League, and it's going to be very, very tough for them to stay in the Bundesliga.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a shift now between being a bit surprised or not, or just being in shock of how bad it is. But now it's pretty severe where they are right now, and they are bottom. And just to conclude the rest of the games before we go into our players of the week, we had a rather sensational draw between Darmstadt and Mainz. Bochum and Köln shared the points, and then you had Gladbach beating Wolfsburg 4-0, which was a rather pivotal win for Seoane and Gladbach. And then you had Bremen and Frankfurt 2-2 as well. Eintracht down 2 goals, but proving very hard to beat. And I guess that will lead me into my player of the week then, because my player of the week was a goal scorer for Bremen, and that is Marvin Duksch, who was selected by Nagelsmann for the Germany squad. Last put on a Germany shirt for the under-18s a year or 10 years or so ago. But he's had 16 goals and 11 assists in his last 44 Bundesliga games ever since he helped them, rather pivotally so, in getting their promotion. And we remember his free kick from a week or so ago, which was incredible. Put Bremen up 2-0, which we thought would be the winner, but the Eintracht got back. But an exciting player and really stepped up since Füllkrug's departure as well. So I think he deserves a shout out, the Bremen player. I'm going a bit, yes, lesser profile as such, but he deserves my shout out.
And as we haven't agreed who will be the players of the week, I will take the other goal scorer for Werder Bremen. My player of the week is Borré. I'm not sure if I've said that
We'll
right.
go two Bremen strikers, yeah.
And we do, because Borré, he's owned by Eintracht Frankfurt. He's on loan at Werder Bremen. But he has given me one of the best moments ever as a pitchside reporter. I was doing Rangers against Eintracht Frankfurt, the Europa League final in Sevilla. And there was a penalty shootout, and Borré will take the last one. And we were all standing there. I was half doing my job, but I was more than half, if that is possible, an Eintracht Frankfurt fan, as it is my former club. And Borré went up. I knew that UEFA had told me that, Jan, you will do the interviews with the winner of the Europa League. I like Scottish football, as you know, but I would prefer to do Eintracht Frankfurt. And Borré came on and he scored a winner. And it was an emotional, jolly ride for 3-4 hours. I interviewed the players, I interviewed the management, the coach, and it was just a fantastic day and or a night in Spain. And for him now, being out on loan in Werder Bremen, getting a goal against Eintracht Frankfurt, do I like that? Yeah, I don't like it doing it against Frankfurt, but I just feel for him as well, because that was a good revenge for him. He wants to show himself. He is a Eintracht legend, will always be, but it's a good feeling to score against your former club and stop this not celebrating. I hope that is okay, because this is up to you. You want to show Eintracht Frankfurt they did it wrong. And so we're ending up with having 2 Werder Bremen players as our players of the week. That hasn't been done since Rune Bratzett and Rudi Völler.
No, indeed. But we give a deserved shout out. They've showed rather promising form as such. Dad, before we conclude, you want to give us the quick second Zweite Bundesliga update?
Zweite Bundesliga update is always interesting, except last round, because then everything happened as we thought. This round, we are back again. Why is Zweite Bundesliga so good? Yes, that is because some of the big clubs in German football are there, Schalke and Hamburg. So in the top of the league now is St. Pauli. They had a draw against Hannover at home. I guess they will be disappointed with that, although Hannover is at the top, but St. Pauli is at the top. So the big game was not Schalke Elversberg, because Elversberg beat Schalke away from home. I think that if I'm not, correct me if I'm wrong, Markus, but I think Elversberg beat Den Hamburger Sportsverein as well, and now they beat Schalke away from home. So that new start of Schalke is not going that well. But the big game this weekend was Hamburg, who played Holstein Kiel. Holstein Kiel for Norwegians. Kiel is the place we go with a ferry. We go from Oslo to Kiel when we go into the continent. So, but this is a big game. Now, this is the reality of Hamburger Sportsverein. So they're playing a local derby, not against St. Pauli. They're playing against Holstein Kiel. Holstein Kiel 2-0 up. Oh, bad day. Oh, well, bravo for Hamburg. Coming back to 2-2. But this is Hamburger Sportsverein. So they're ending up losing 4-2. So this is a big win for Holstein Kiel. They're not only the little brother, there is like a little brother in that area. So now number 1 is St. Pauli, then Hamburg, and then Holstein Kiel. So 3 teams in and around Hamburg, in the Hamburg area. So Zweite Liga always produces, and we all know that Hamburg will end up being 3rd in the league, and they will lose the playoff to one team in the Erste Bundesliga.
As the story goes. Dad, I thank you for being part of this. As always, we look forward to an international break in which we will be able to assess some of the international teams, and then we will be back for further Bundesliga updates. But for now, Dad, thank you.
And auf Wiedersehen.